Hi everyone. Okay, I'm live. I was having problems with my phone. I've been having problems with my phone all week, but hopefully this is good and you can hear me and I am good to go. My name is Joya Caso and I am a licensed clinical social worker, but I focus on helping parents navigate and strengthen their relationship with their children, which I have found in my years of practice and also personal experience that our relationship with our children is of utmost importance. And so today I'll be talking about praising our children. Now, there is nothing wrong, let me say that right off the bat, there is nothing wrong with praising our children. I think oftentimes it comes from a place of really wanting to help our children succeed. We're motivated by, seeing the good in them and also helping them be self-sufficient and be able to see the good in themselves and their own and trust their own abilities and their own capabilities. However, when we do praise our children too much, and there is such thing as too much of a good thing is a bad thing when it comes to praising our children. So it has to be done in moderation. So here are some of the reasons why praising our children can do more harm than good. The first one is that when the praise is too vague, it's too generic. Things like good job, or you're so smart, or that's amazing, or that's fantastic, that's terrific. Those praises are too generic and too vague, and we call them empty praise because they're not specific enough as far as what you're praising and who it's directed for and things like that. So when the praise is too vague, too generic, it does more harm than good. The second reason is that when the praise is too automatic, so it comes out right away without even thinking. Like, let's say your kids come to you and they want to show you something, or they show you their project and they show you or they tell you what their teachers told them at school for behaving well or doing such a or being able to finish their task right away, right? And so the first thing that comes out is, oh, that's such a good job. So that's like too automatic without even really assessing the situation or thinking about it. It comes out right away. I remember one day when our daughter was telling me the stories, lots of stories that she tells me, and the first thing that comes out of my mouth is, oh, that's such a good job. And then she actually called me out on it and told me that I had said the words good job too many times already. I am a person who likes to give compliments, and I'm a person that, like, words are important to me, and so I give them also with such grace and genuine feelings about it. And so I meant no harm, which a lot of parents, I know that you mean no harm when you praise your children, absolutely. But that was such a good reminder, for me. I can hear the ice maker. I'm home today. I can hear the ice maker. Okay, so I should have turned it off. But, again, you mean no harm when you praise your children. But I think that there's this thinking that we've held on to for many, many years that, praising our kids is the way to go. And well, I can tell you today that it is not the only way to go. That is not the only way that you can help your children. Praising our children is also can also do more harm than good when it's the only thing that we do to help them. So again, like, and praising them for obvious things, like character traits that we want to see in them, like honesty and being kind and being generous or being helpful, right? Those are the things that are obvious, and those are the things that we want them to grow into. And so that those things don't need praise. Those are those are things that should be celebrated, but to constantly acknowledge them or recognize them, actually, to constantly recognize them for everyday things will do more harm than good to our children. Okay. The boost that they get from praise is very temporary. So if you are after lasting change, if you want to see things in your children, if you want them to grow into healthy habits and things like that, that last long, praise is not going to do that. Praise is very temporary. And if they are constantly being praised for something that they do or achieve, then they will start looking and depending on outside recognition. So what happens is that if they don't get the recognition, then it will have an adverse effect on them, and they'll stop doing what it is that they're doing if the recognition or the praise is taken away or stopped. An author by the name of Alfie Kohn actually wrote tremendously on this topic, and he says that one of the things that he says is that praise is sort of manipulating. So we hear a lot, or let me take that back. I hear very often from parents that they feel like their kids are manipulative, or they want to know. So like they'll ask me a question and they'll want to know, is this behavior manipulative? Is this behavior something that I need to stop right now? Well, Alfie Kohn, the author, he flips it back to parents saying, hey, you praising your children can also be a form of manipulation on your part, meaning you are praising them to get a specific behavior out of them. So it's like this transaction almost, you give the praise, they give you what you want, the behavior that you want. And so he's saying, be cognizant of that and be careful about how you use praise. And again, they'll start to depend on that recognition from you or from anyone. And they'll start to depend on it and look for it. So that's how praise can also be harmful. The next thing is that they won't learn to just be and just do because of constant praise. So if they keep if you keep praising them for things that they already love to do, if you keep praising them for things that come natural to them, they will start to do those things for the wrong motives, which is to get your praise, which is to please you, which is to, Alfie Kohn describes it as stealing their joy for doing or being, who they are, doing the things that they love to do. So they won't learn to just be and just do because of the effects of recognition or constant praise. And then the last thing that I wanted to point out is that constant praise, when that's all that you do, when it's too vague, when it's too automatic, the children will start to attribute the good and even the bad to their circumstances. So they are going to be externally motivated by praise and recognition, and then they'll miss their own self-worth. And this is, for me, probably the biggest deal of why I'm bringing this topic to you today, because you want your children to grow knowing that they can validate themselves and that they don't need other people to tell them, that they're good, because you want them to see their own self-worth just for being who they are, and that their self-worth does not depend on what they can and can do, what results they can bring, and things of that nature. In 1998, there was a study done, psychological study, and what they did was they had the children in one room and they started rewarding them for what they were doing and all their achievements, and the rewards came in different forms. But what happened was that when they actually took the rewards away, they stopped doing whatever it was that they were doing. So that was experimental, but there are many studies now that do not support the fact or the truth that or the idea. So there are studies now that do not support the idea that praising our children is the best thing for them. So if you are now asking, right? So I talked extensively about why and how praising our children can do more harm than good. So when the praise is too vague and generic, automatic, or if it's the only thing that you kind of like hold on to as far as helping your children become successful, those are the reasons that constant praise can do more harm than good. Remember that praise is temporary. It gives a temporary boost, but it does not build their identity. Because then children will start to look for recognition outside of themselves, and they'll become externally motivated, and they'll attribute every good or bad thing to their circumstances, and they'll start to depend on recognition. And the extreme of that would be if you remove the recognition, if you remove the praise, then they'll stop doing what it is that they're doing. So what can we do better as parents? First, be specific. So I'm going to sound like a broken record with this one. In my coaching with parents, we talk a lot about being specific. As it sounds simple and yet complicated when it comes to practice. So, when we say, okay, be specific, it registers in our mind right away. I need to be specific. But then what does that look like in practice? And I go through in my coaching with parents step by step on how you can be specific with the kind of personality that you have as a parent, the kind of personality that your children have, because it's very important. So that would be the opposite of constant praise. We said that constant praise is too vague and too generic. The antidote to that is that we need to be more specific as far as if you want to point out the good that they're doing or who they are and things like that. Like, be more specific on what you're praising. So don't just give an empty praise. The next one is be knowledgeable. Okay, be knowledgeable about your children's personality, their skills, their achievements, all of it, their dreams, their wishes, their dislikes, their likes. So the way to, if you are knowledgeable about your children, then you can be more specific. They really feed off of each other. If you know and if you are in tune with your children's needs, then good job won't be part of, or something else will be part of your vocabulary, not just good job, or you're so smart, or this is amazing, and this is terrific. You can be more, intentional about describing their efforts, describing their achievements, and things like that. Now, the third one that you can do, so be specific and then be knowledgeable about your children. And last but not least, be connected and engaged. This is where it all comes down to. Being connected and being engaged is a lot of work. I have to admit, and that I am just like you. I am a parent too. And it's not just about, sitting down at dinner time or being in the same room as your children. It is more than that. Being connected and being engaged is so much more than that. It's about listening to them. It's about letting them express who they are, letting them verbalize what they're thinking, and then watching how you react. We talked about this last week in the live session about, checking yourself and making sure that you do a self-check before you say anything, before you respond to your children. We often teach children to stop and think, right? That should also be an example that we're setting, is that we stop and think before we say anything. So be specific, be knowledgeable, be engaged and connected, rather than depending on praise and praise and praise to boost the self-esteem of your children. Okay. Now, I don't want you to feel restricted, right? With this kind of knowledge, I hope that you feel free, because what it's really saying is that praise is not the only way that you can help your children. Everything that you do, little or big things, they all help your children. They all help move your children forward and build their identity. And the reason why I came up with the free guide, the 15 ways to affirm your children, is so that you don't have to be stuck on good job, just like I was. So now you have 15 ways, and I mean 15 ways to really, really connect with your children and engage with them. And then you can try out different things. Hi, LaDuena. With Anaya, she thrives, or should I say operates better when she's affirmed or praised. Okay. Anything other than that causes her to kind of shut down, in your opinion? How can I help her work through this? Yes. Great question. Thank you. So, hey. So I actually am, my love language is words of affirmation. So I can understand where she's coming from. But, in our, of course, in our maturity, we understand, right, as parents. And for me, like, I understand that words of affirmation is not the only way to feel loved, because that is the point of love languages, is that we discover our own specific love language, but then at the same time knowing that, like, okay, other people can express how much they love me through other ways. And so when you could still affirm her in instead of like saying, you're amazing, which again is kind of generic. So you recognize her for her efforts. So being more specific as far as like, wow, I saw that you did a great job, with that. I know she's a cheerleader, right? So, you can like praise her for her form, or like the exercises that they do and things like that. And then also bringing it back to the biblical affirmations as far as like how God sees her, and how she is the apple of God's eyes and things like that, which is like, I think, one of my favorites. But again, attaching the praise with the effort, because the process and the journey is more important than the outcome. So we don't, like, if they come home with a report card that is stellar, that is amazing, grades are wonderful, you can tell her that, you recognize her efforts this quarter, and that you saw how hard she worked on her classes, and how much she pays attention to her teachers and to the lessons, and how focused she is. So you're not really, again, praising her for how many A's she brought in, or you're not really praising her for just doing, but that who she is. So you also want to validate her for who she is, and don't praise her for everything, for everything. So you can say things like, hey, I saw you helping your little brothers today. I appreciate you. And then you can also use you statements. This is probably like the only time where we can use you statements. So there's the I statements and the you statements. The you statements would be like, hey, you were helping your little brothers today, and I appreciate that. Or you worked hard on this project and it turned out great. So the praise has to, and celebrate who she is, not just what she does, because we are already a results-oriented society where we like to see outcomes and numbers, and fortunately our children are gonna be dealing with all of that as grown adults. And so at home, while we have them, we want them to enjoy what they're doing throughout the process, not just waiting for the outcome, not just waiting. It's not about the results. It's about, the journey. It's about the process of being in the team, developing like that teamwork, growing into like discipline and things like that, because really they don't just join activities just to get rewarded, right? But also the character traits that they learn through being in the team. And hi, Whitney. Thank you for joining. So I hope that answered the question, LaDuana. Let me know if there's more specific things that I can help with that. So yes, celebrate her for who she is and the person that she is. The first thing that inspired me, thank you for the hearts. The first thing that, I'm glad, you're welcome. The first thing that inspired me to bring this topic is because actually I met and I worked with teenagers who were experiencing low self-esteem. And I met their parents too. We worked as a family, and their parents are well-meaning, just like you all are. And they felt like they were doing everything that they could in their power. They felt like, they were pointing out the positives in their children, and they were saying such good things to their children. And this is why, like, I always say, like, it's not just the formal training that I stand on, or like theories, but also the work that I've done and doing with clients. Because what these teenagers told me, so I asked them, I said, well, when your parents tell you, so again, these are teens who are experiencing low self-esteem. And I asked them, how does it make you feel when your parents say, oh, you're so brave, or you're so smart, and you're an amazing person? What they told me surprised me very much. They said that it actually does not make them feel good. It makes them feel like they are now, again, expected to, they are now again put, more expectations are put on them. And so this is another standard that they can't reach. Like, okay, so, I'm brave, but I really don't feel brave. And my parents think I'm smart. I don't really feel smart. So this is why, like, we have to be careful about how we use praise. The more specific you are, the better. And they were saying too that, like, whenever they would hear like, oh, you're so courageous and things like that. So before you give those praises to your children, like, just make sure that you observe them in their element, so that you know what it is that they really, they like, and what they, like I said, what their dreams and wishes are for themselves, so that we don't put those unrealistic expectations on them. And the second reason why I thought about bringing out this topic is because I met and worked with professional working women and moms who are having difficulties accepting and embracing their own self-worth. And so their own insecurities are consuming them. And many times it's crippling. So then we see adults who talk down on themselves, who are trying to find significance in the wrong places. So then whether a good thing or a bad thing happens to them in their lives, they see their circumstances as the cause or the primary cause for, the good thing or the bad thing that's happening in their lives. So praise your children in moderation and build relationship with them. Keep building and building and building. So next week I'll be back at the same time, same day, Tuesday at 12:30 daylight savings time now, I guess. And I know that we've been talking, so last week we talked about helping our children with difficult emotions, and then this week talked about just now about too much praise can do more harm than good on our children. So now, as you are thinking through these things, which we talked about a lot of things that you can easily do for your family and in your family, I know that you're probably, thinking about implementing changes or trying out these techniques that we've talked about. So next week, the topic will be on staying motivated. So now that you have kind of identified areas that you might want to tweak or areas that you might want to add or subtract tools in them, I will be here next week to support you as you implement those things. And I would love to hear your feedback as well as you are trying out new things with your children and with your family. So that's it for now. Please feel free to comment. For those of you who will be watching the replay, feel free to comment. If you have specific questions or you want to clarify things with me, just let me know. Thank you again, ladies, for joining me today. Bye. See you next week, 12:30 daylight savings time on Tuesday.